You are Locked On Hawks Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The Locked On Hawks Postcast, your home for the best Atlanta Hawks talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me is NBA and college basketball analyst DeShaun Tate. This episode is sponsored by FanDuel. So right now, FanDuel customers, at least the new ones, can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And of course, our Locked On Hawks Postcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So 11 is truly the ultimate alternate. We'll discuss. And Hawks, an NBA legend, has called it a career. We'll download on that and keys to the Hawks' final game ahead of the All-Star break, which also might be keys for the second half of their season. But first, let's talk takes. And Tate, you said your take for tonight's 112-106 win over the Orlando Magic on the road is simple. The charity stripe was friendly tonight.
Yeah, and this was a much bigger win to Tenitra than I think some people may recognize, especially because this is not only one that I really feel like they needed from a confidence standpoint, also still kind of settling in with having some of the newer guys on the team, kind of still adjustments and things of that nature, establishing and developing a little bit of that chemistry. By the way, 8 and 9 seeds currently, 8 and 9 seeds currently in the East, both of them in the same division, first meeting, only separated by a half a game. This could mean something bigger along the line later on down the road. That being said, I think that, when we always talk about that big three, between the free throw shooting, between the turnovers, and between the what was the other one? I feel like
I think
we've said it enough.
Turnovers. Right. You said turnovers. You talked about free throws, and we also talked about. I guess it's kind of like a 1A and 1B in there, sort of like those points off turnovers, if you will.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Still trying to figure that turnover thing out, but it seems like every time we check one box on one, then we got to go back and check the box on the other one, and then that one falls behind. But no, tonight was certainly about the free throws, and especially and particularly down the stretch of this game. When you're talking about this being a team that shot 85% from the free throw line, 75% at the half, which I think just wasn't totally bad, but I know that they needed to do better, especially when you look at the fact that each and every single quarter, it had been like really, really tight of a game at the end of every single quarter. So that this one was going down to the wire. Eventually, it's going to come down to some free throws, and these are the ones that they really needed to make, and they ended up making them. And Orlando's one of those little sneaky teams I really feel like coming into the game that, last year we seen what kind of, they kind of catapulted, went to another level. I think they were like number 6 in the East or something like that. One of the more impressive and improving teams in the NBA, especially in the Eastern Conference. So I think it was good for Atlanta to kind of humble them a little bit.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you on that one because, they were that team where not that we didn't know that they were going to continue to progress, but I think they kind of impressed everyone and surprised everyone a little bit last year with getting into that 6th seed. But that also means that you come back that next season and those expectations are high. And they're kind of where, like you said, hovering where the Hawks are. They're both 26-game winners at this point, but the Magic have played one more game. So obviously 29 losses for them now. But that's one of those where it could be neck and neck. And how many conversations have we had to this point in the season where other than say your top 3 in the East, it's just a clusterfuckle from there on? I mean, every night it seems like it's trading places between, I'd say probably that 4th spot all the way through to honestly about the 10th. And so these are those two teams, like you said, that are right in the thick of it, who've seen the other side of the play-in so far this season, where we've seen the Hawks even be in the 4th spot, the 5th spot. So have the Magic. So these are the types of games where if you can go on the road and get a win, especially in that first pairing of the season, I think that that's a good look for the Hawks. I think that's a confidence booster. And more importantly, to your point, now you're starting to see how this team is going to gel as a new look team. And that was kind of my take tonight, if you will, kind of looking like, okay, new look Hawks. Okay, okay, Bench Mob, the remix, because you and I have had conversations for the better part of the last 5-6 years combined about especially I'd say the last year and a half, obviously with DeAndre Hunter coming off the bench, But and Bogey, of course, was a starter at one point as well. So between the last 5 or 6 years and those two guys, we've talked about how important they've been when they have been relegated to those bench roles, but also how they've shown that they have the ability to be inserted into the starting lineup and can be effective. And I felt like that was something that we saw tonight. I think you and I were probably comfortable and confident in what we were going to see from Caris LeVert. We got it. 18 points, 8 rebounds, a couple of assists, and he was 6 of 11 from the field, including an all-important 3 of 7 from 3. And yes, even a 3 of 4 from the free throw line, because ultimately those 3 points, when you look at a 6-point win, you look at those 3 points as being that much more critical. So that's right. To him as a newbie, to this Hawks team, to this bench. And then Terance Mann, also 12 points, couple boards for him. Perfect from the field, perfect from the free throw line. Couldn't have asked for much more from Caris LeVert and from Terance Mann. Caris in 32 minutes, Terance in just 15. So that one to me was really, really impressive. And, that's the kind of thing that you want to see. I'm sure Quinn Snyder wants to see from those new guys as well. And you're hoping, dare I say it, that when we look back, and I know he is a starter, but you look back and remember how we were wondering, not quite sure what we're going to get out of a Dyson Daniels, but we have been pleasantly surprised throughout this entire season. And I'm hoping that maybe these guys will do the same, even like a Georges Niang, who again played 24 minutes tonight. So heavy minutes from the bench, heavy rotation for them, 8 points from him, 4 rebounds as well. And although it's 2 of 7 from the field, hey man, we'll take it, because at least he too only missed one of his free throws. And again, if I could take those 3 points from Niang and I could take those 3 points from LeVert, or even take those 3 points from Mann, that's your game.
Yeah. And I think that one of the other things I was really excited to see was to see that Mouhamed Gay ended up getting the call back up from the Skyhawks back to the Atlanta Hawks, and then even played himself well into the starting lineup. I'm kind of noticing when they kind of working on getting some of these guys acclimated and fitting into some of these starting lineup rotations. Those are the guys, if you notice, that are getting the ball to be able to shoot it first right out the gate. I think that is really important to kind of get those guys involved early and often. When it was DeAndre Hunter in his start or starting role at one point in time, trying to work on his confidence and things like that, you put the ball in his hands coming straight off of the tip. Zachary Risachet, how important that his role is for this team. Try and get him used to getting some shots up earlier in the game and things of that nature right off the tip. Mouhamed Gay had his turn this time. He scored the first 7 points of the game for them. So I think it was really important for us to see that and to match the energy of the Orlando Magic, because we know that they are a totally different team when they're at home at the Kia Center. So I think it was important for the Atlanta Hawks to kind of simplify the game and definitely try to get up and down the floor as they do as one of the top 2 best teams in the league in terms of pace, to kind of confuse things a little bit for Orlando. And then lastly, to try and neutralize the guard play. Everything in terms of Orlando is kind of predicated off of that guard play. Obviously, when Jalen Suggs is playing, he's one of those pieces. Cole Anthony, Anthony Black had a big game in their last one against San Antonio. Gary Harris, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, the list goes on and on. So I think they did a good job with kind of neutralizing the guards first. And if you're going to just let, Goga Batiste and Jonathan Isaac beat you, then you just kind of got to live with that. And I didn't feel very confident that they would be able to do so with 5 guys for the Atlanta Hawks scoring in double digits tonight. Only 2 for Orlando, being Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero.
Right. And I think if you're going to have Banchero, Wagner, Anthony, and Caldwell-Pope in that starting lineup, I'm still going to say, if I look at that starting lineup and I look at the Hawks starting lineup, I think that this win is that much more impressive, because they are going with Okongwu and Gay in that starting lineup. And those guys obviously are in because, again, Clint Capella still out, if you will, Jalen Johnson out. So you're inserting players into the starting lineup for the Hawks, and not truly inserting just players in, like you're like Mouhamed Gay, like you said, been called up. So I think that's impressive too. And going back real quick to our newbies, they also, amongst those 3, amongst Niang, Mann, and LeVert, only 2 turnovers. I think that's very impressive as well, because if one of the things you and I are talking about is not having turnovers, or if you're going to have them, at least also make sure that your opponent has the turnovers and that you are able to create points off those turnovers. That's another thing that you and I talk about as well. And I felt like at least tonight, the Hawks kept it even. Like, yeah, they end up with 17 turnovers, but they also forced 18. And yeah, Magic, you got 20 points off the Hawks and their turnovers, but they also got 20 off of you. So again, if you're not going to play sort of that game of like you and I say, easy baskets, easy buckets, and actually convert on them, then at least make sure you make it a little bit difficult for the other team. And I think that is absolutely what the Hawks had to do. And apparently, I don't know who made it difficult on Adam Silver. Maybe it was the fan base. Maybe it was the play of this one particular guy. But you know what? He played himself right into yet another All-Star appearance. Again, we'll talk about that in the N1. This episode of our Locked On Hawks Postcast is brought to you by Hims. So let's think about this, guys, and girls, for that matter. Let's think about this. And I said Hims, but excuse me for having a little faux pas of the mouth. That is Skims. When I found out about Skims, Skims, and that they're making underwear for men, I was intrigued because, hey, as a lady, still want to see your guy have on nice skivvies. I've heard so much about the quality of this particular product from friends and family members. So told my guy to give it a try. And actually found out lives up to the hype. So if you've always had issues with underwear, maybe it's fit, maybe it's comfort, or just finding the right style, well, Skims has changed all of that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. So you can try Skims boxer brief and you might just get hooked. They're perfect for an active lifestyle. They move with you, never lose their shape, stay in place all day, whether you're working, running errands. They're comfortable and reliable, and they're lightweight. So the material feels pretty amazing from what I'm told, almost like they are right there with your skin. That's why they're called Skims. So shop Skims men's at skims.com and Skims stores. Let them know that we here at Locked On Hawks Postcast sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gift for your Valentine, or maybe for yourself, if you're one of our guy watchers, audience members, or listeners, Skims just launched the best Valentine's shop ever, available in sizes for men, but even kids, even women, because hey, there is Galentine's Day, and even pets. So again, make sure that as soon as you wrap up the Locked On Hawks Postcast, you shop Skims men's at skims.com and Skims stores. So, DeShaun, we are having this conversation for the umpteenth time. Well. Trae Young is headed to All-Star after all. Adam Silver announced today he added Trae to the All-Star roster as an injury replacement for Giannis Antetokounmpo, who, of course, won't play because of that cap injury. So Trae is going to join Team Chuck and the All-Stars for a second straight year as far as an All-Star injury replacement. Of course, he made appearances in 2020 and 2022. But before we go there, maybe what also helped Adam Silver to make his decision was the performance of Trae last week. He led the Hawks to a 3-1 record, averaged 31.3 points, 10.5 assists per game, snagged Eastern Conference Player of the Week honor. So congratulations to Trae, not just for getting the nod, but let's also give him his flowers for helping the Hawks to get back on track after that 8-game losing streak and lead them to a 3-1 record last week.
Why was this so difficult to do from the beginning, and we have to always jump through all these hoops all the time just for there to be something that is just so simple and so clear? Who else could you even consider at this point? The Cade Cunningham thing, I get it. I understand to whatever degree. I try not to feel like
don't go too far. Don't go too far into that one, because I got a question for you on that.
Okay. I got a feel I know where this is going. However, I've heard some other names that were thrown out there before Trae that ended up getting the nod for the All-Star.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you really choose not to take the guy that now, after this game, 4 of his last 6 games, averaging 32 a game, 12 assists, 47% from the field, 34% from three, and also obviously in 5 of his last 7, 30 plus points per game. 23 on average, 11, 41, and 34 this season. The only thing I could possibly even think of is the fact that it has so much to do with the record, but that to me shouldn't play a factor. I think that if we're just talking about players who deserve to be based on numbers, and I get it, some of this stuff is going to come from voting, and there is that element that I don't feel like we can really ignore when it comes to, you know, the like and the hate of a player like that comes along with a player like a Trae Young. So congratulations to Trae. Glad to see that he's been able to get the nod as an All-Star reserve, and is definitely more than deserving.
Yeah, and I had to kind of stop you there, of course, in jest, because as you mentioned, you're always going to have that conversation about who got snubbed out of the snubs, right? So we know Trae got traded, and he's now off the snub list, if you will, now inserted into the All-Star lineup, but you're still going to have people out there want, like what you said, LaMelo Ball. He was the guy who, start to finish, was the top vote getter. So you look at other players that quote unquote were in that snub category, and it sounds like to me, I'm just double checking for the people in the back that were asking the questions, just double checking that you were okay that the commish chose Trae to replace Giannis, and not surprised that he didn't get snubbed yet again, even by the commish.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible for him to have gotten snubbed again. I don't think there was another player that existed, especially with LaMelo Ball, in the event that he was going to get the nod over Trae. LaMelo tonight just went down with an injury, so he wouldn't have been able to participate anyway. Nevertheless, it should have never come to that. I'm glad it didn't come to that. I feel like some of this stuff is kind of being a slap in the face at this point. Maybe 1 year. I mean, what is it? We're talking about the third year that this has happened now? Or no, the second year that this happened?
Yeah, second year in a row.
Regardless, the first one I'm willing to excuse. You do that 2 times, and Trae has been one of the top point guards in this league. The numbers have not shown any different than they were when he was more than deserving of before, and it didn't even have to come to that.
Yeah, and I was going to say, actually, DeShaun, might I caveat that and say that the numbers are actually moving in his favor, because he is slowly but surely, it may look like pedestrian numbers to other people, but if you are actually watching the effort on the defensive side of the ball, those numbers have had an uptick, right? So I do think that should count for something. And one of the reasons that the assist number is there isn't because he's just dropping dimes just for the sake of getting a double-double or just for the sake of padding stats. It's because he is really, really learning to play and replay, set and reset his game with new players. And I think with new teammates, and I think that should at least count for something. And the fact that this team has shown some real flashes of excellence. And even when they get down, Trae has gone down a couple games here and there. Jalen went down, came back up, and then went down for the season. So when you look at those things and the fact that Trae Young has still been able to perform at a high level and is still open and willing to evolve his game. And like I said, I know it's just a little uptick, but I just had to shout out the uptick on the defensive side of the ball, at least for the effort, because there have been games where you and I have had some fun with Trae getting a block here or a block there, or 3, 4, 5 steals in a game. And we're like, okay, that's great. But I think too, that it is frustrating for Trae's fan base to still be having this combo about him being an add-on. And like you said, with him this year leading the association in assists per game, and why is it every time that he's performed at that high level at the All-Star weekend? Like, we're now talking about his 4th All-Star. Have we not seen him in his first 3?
Right.
Have we not seen a guy who always competes if he gets into the 3-point contest? Have we not seen a guy who gets 10 minutes on average when he does get inserted into the game, and 10, 12 points in like 10 minutes, and he's throwing dimes to any and everybody who's willing to catch him, and he always makes the game exciting? And everybody knows that game has been under indictment for whether or not it is watchable from start to finish. So I'm just saying. And I think the other question that I just wanted to ask again is just, that's just that hashtag petty. Some have said since the first announcement of those who made the starting lineup that if they were ever asked in this process to be added, they decline on principle after being snubbed or trade yet again. So I was just curious, If you got the call from Adam Silver today, would you have accepted or would you have declined?
I think it's just one of those things, first and foremost, of what you have to do. What you cannot afford to do is to decline it and turn it down, especially if you are Trae Young. So, respectfully, you go ahead and you accept it. But you can't ignore the fact that I truly believe, at least for me, speaking for myself, there's a little piece of you that want to be like, you know what? Right. I'm good. I'm so good on y'all. Y'all did this again after I've been more than deserving. So I think that's probably the bigger thing for me. Ultimately, that would be my answer. But I think you do have to go ahead and accept it.
Yeah, I think you do as well. Because listen, 20 years from now, 10 years from now, no one is going to care about how you got on there. When we look at your wiki page or when we look at your stat line, it is going to say 1, 2, 3, 4-time All-Star. That's right. Period. All that it's going to say. So I'm with you. I accept it. What I would do is just ball out, and I would try to, insert myself into everything possible, skills, challenge, 3-point, whatever it is that I can do, and just show once again why I am a guy who deserves to be here each and every year because I am playing at that level. But listen, since we're being petty and telling you guys about being petty, why don't you guys tell us what you would do? I mean, seriously, listeners, audience, viewers, what would you do if Adam Silver came to you at this point? I mean, would you be petty and just say, you know what, thanks, but no thanks, I'm good? Or would you say, you know what, I'm looking at my long-term legacy and I'm saying, yeah, no, thanks for the invite. I will see you in Cali in a week and a half. Well, we'll download on someone else that said deuces, but for a much more positive thing, by the way. And of course, we'll talk about the keys to the final game ahead of All-Star in Who Got Next. This episode of our Locked On Hawks Postcast is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get it on in than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. In fact, most people who love using FanDuel's live betting feature love it because it keeps every moment of the game excited. So whether you're backing a team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, never have to feel like you missed your chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. So right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So, DeShaun, we got to say goodbye at some point to the legends. We can't keep them for as long as all of us would like to, especially because, hey, Hubie Brown gave us some good years within the 91 years that he has been on this earth. And we found out that the former Hawks coach and the legendary analyst is indeed calling it quits at the age of 91. Called his last game this past weekend. So when you think about Hubie Brown, what do you feel like is his legacy to the game of basketball?
I think that, it's a combination between being a coach and just being a pillar of the game, being someone who did such a great job. You don't find guys too often who played and coached and, breaking down the game as a broadcaster for many years and do all of these things great. Right. And so I think you'll just be reminded to me of a combination of so many of those different things. And, just having the opportunity at one point in time just to be able to pick his brain and talk a little bit about basketball, hearing some of those stories. I'm one of those people that's kind of like a sponge and just soaks it all up and just, here for the stories and so forth. A great personality, not just a person that you hear, on the air. But also a person that you just can, pull to the side just to have some conversation and just talk some good old basketball with. And there's not a lot of fluff, just the real in him. And I love that, the fact that we've been able to have him as long as we have and hearing the calls. And there's not a lot of, there wasn't, especially specifically with the calls more so, because that's what I remember more than anything is the broadcaster piece of him is just the fact that, I don't feel like I was it wasn't a lot of just trying to over excite, crowd. And it was just a lot about knowledge. A lot of it was very genuine. It was very organic. The way that he would react to the game in which he was calling. And so if not nothing else, I can appreciate that, because sometimes I feel like people try to go out of their way to try to entertain with their voice and different things like that. But he was never that person. I think that's when you can really tell not only a true person, like a true broadcaster in this game, but also a person who truly, truly loves, appreciates, and being a student of the game as much as they are a teacher of it.
Oh, I would agree. Hubie made the game simple. And so, like you said, he would find these little nooks and crannies in each and every play, but didn't feel like he had to overwhelm you in each and every play. And that is so lost sometimes, I think. It's a lost art. I feel like sometimes, especially if it's a 3-man booth, sometimes the broadcasters are kind of stumbling over one another because everybody wants to get their words in and everybody has to tell you every single thing about every play. And I felt like he would just find the niches. And every time you walked away from a broadcast that Hubie Brown was on, you felt like a smarter fan. You felt like even a smarter journalist. Yeah. So I really do think that the way that he called the game, it's not a completely lost art, because there are certainly some guys whom you can say might be from the school of Hubie. And Mike Tirico talked about the amazing 10-year run that they had. And that, to use your word, organic, is a perfect way to describe how they would call games, because literally, and of course, you and I, we're analysts, we're sportscasters. So of course, we're going to want to hear commentary, but that was some of the commentary that I was always here for. I was never going to get up while a game was going on. I'm never going to put it on mute, because honestly, I just want to hear what Hubie has to say. I want to hear how Hubie has to say it. So yeah, we're going to miss him on the sidelines and definitely appreciate what he brought to the call for the game of basketball. Now, the Hawks, speaking of something that's sort of final, of course, they've got their final game of the All-Star break here against the Knicks. And they have an interesting opportunity there as well. You and I talked earlier about standings. And right now you got the Hawks, like you said, right there in that 8th spot. You got the Knicks right there in that 3rd spot. And yet the Hawks have an opportunity to win the season series in just game 3 of the 5-game series this season. What do they need to do to get a W and go into this All-Star break on a positive note?
I think first is really about the balance, having that balance between, being aggressive, because that, it's the Knicks, for crying out loud. So we don't really even need to specify and dress this thing up and to make it, we don't really need to, promote it very much. But we know that they're going to come out aggressive and want to, punch. So of course it's going to be important to, punch back when getting punched, but even throwing the first punch, I think, is very important against this team. Obviously taking the crowd completely out of it, which is something I think that the Hawks are typically pretty good at doing anyway, especially in New York, letting your game play and show more than getting caught up in all the New York type of stuff in that particular game. But to also just kind of keep it simple, like not trying to do anything extra, not feeling like you got to go shot for shot, those kind of things. Like the Hawks is, if not the best in the league, one of the best in the league for sure. And I say this all the time about continuing to just know who they are, having that identity, not letting anybody rattle them or get them off of their game plan. They win and they lose the same way every single time. And while that's not a good thing for a lot of teams, that is actually a positive thing for the Atlanta Hawks, who've seen so much turnover with new guys being added to the roster and guys going down with injuries and having to rely on G League players and so forth. Having that conversation with them even to tell them exactly what this game means. I think, again, that balance, you do have to have the conversation of which is like, we're going into this game knowing that it's not just another game, but we're also going into this game treating it like it's just another game. That balance within itself, I think, is the mentality that they need to have. And in the event that they do that, they'll likely be coming away with the result that they typically do when they go to New York.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I want to see in that game tomorrow night, and Wednesday night. And that's the game that I would also be encouraged by if I see that balance, if I see a stat sheet like we've seen tonight where everyone scores, everyone rebounds, because that tells me that everyone has a commitment to two-way play. And that's what gets you to the 4th win in a row, which obviously would be wonderful for the Hawks to be able to go into that All-Star break on that high note. So yeah, for me, I would agree with you. I'd love to see balance. I'd love to have that conversation as we are heading into this All-Star break. Locked On Sports Atlanta is the #1 place to hang out after every game. So remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more on the Hawks, check out Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. We will see you next time.